I was recently lucky enough to have the chance to play Star Wars Outlaws early, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the 5 things that I enjoyed from my time with the game, and a few that I didn't. A few housekeeping notes before we get stuck in. I had around about 4 hours with the game, with 3 of those hours being the initial part of the game on the planet of Toshara, and the final hour on the world of Kamiji. From the captured footage, there are certain things that I can't show. I promise it's nothing too crazy, it's just mainly menus and stuff like that, which are usually not shown in early previews like this. Thankfully, during my time with the game, I didn't really experience anything of a buggy nature, so a big thumbs up there from me. But that's enough of that, let's get into the things that I did actually enjoy. Number 1, atmosphere. The first thing when I loaded into the game that I noticed was that this game looks and feels like Star Wars. The ships, outfits, and as always the sunsets are present from the first scene and make you feel like you're really in the universe. While we're typically not used to playing a character like vess, as we usually get to experience this universe from the perspective of a Jedi, it still feels familiar in the best kind of way. As I reached the first settlement, Miragana, that feeling only got amplified, as it 100% gives you the same vibes you'd expect in Mos Eisley. Full of gambling, crime, sand, and the occasional stormtrooper, as always trying to keep the order or get a little slice of the action for himself. Overall, I think the game does a really good job of setting the ambience and creating a clear differentiation between games like the Jedi series. While 4 hours definitely isn't enough to know if this feeling sticks, in the time that I spent on the game, it definitely made me feel like I was part of that universe. Number 2, the Sandbox. While I can't show you the menus as I mentioned before, I do want to talk about the systems and processes that surround how you play the game. Every time you make a decision in the game, it will affect something else or how you're able to approach something. When I first arrived in Toshara, I was encouraged by one of the game's first companions, Waka, to go to the cantina. As soon as I walked through the doors, I was clocked by one of the patrons asking if I wanted to see Gorak, the boss of the Pikes. Since this was my objective, I decided to chat with them. But rather than giving up this information willingly, I would have had to have paid them. Now, since I was a little short on cash, I decided to hold on to my credits and see if I could make my own way up. And, lo and behold, with a sneaky bit of lockpicking and vent crawling, I managed to make my way in for $3.99. In pretty much every single part of the game that I played, there was a ton of different ways of approaching a specific objective. I feel like a lot of the game is going to be focused on making the right decisions at the right times, rather than your specific gaming prowess. Avoiding fights and talking your way around things might just be the best way to go about it. I'm definitely getting more Mass Effect vibes rather than the more action-focused Star Wars games of recent years. I say that as a good thing too. Not that I don't love the Jedi series, because I do, but this is definitely a nice change of pace when it comes to the Star Wars gaming universe. I particularly like the decisions that you can make mid-mission that will allow you to change your allegiances from gang to gang, depending on what you think will be the most beneficial for you and your crew. Although I played it pretty safe in my preview, I think I'm going to take a few more risks when the game fully launches. Number 3. Minigames. Now, usually I absolutely hate having to do minigames to unlock doors or open up terminals, as they usually feel like they're putting a game to slow you down and pad out game time. But in this game, since so much revolves around being stealthy and finding information to be able to open up more dialogue and opportunities, it genuinely feels more immersive rather than disruptive, which is a really nice change of pace compared to how I usually feel about this type of mechanic in-game. A few really great examples are, 1, the general locks, rather than it being the typical Skyrim position the thing and turn the thing that has been bastardized countless times since Elder Scrolls V released. You're met with a similar visual, granted, but a much more different mechanic, as essentially it's a mini rhythm game, which at first caused some frustration, but over time I got more proficient at it and really started to enjoy it. Another one is essentially doing a Star Wars Wordle to unlock terminals, which is oddly satisfying when you get it right under par, and also rewards you for doing it too. Finally, and possibly my favourite, there's essentially a horse racing gambling system in the game. But like all things in the underworld, there are ways of tipping the odds in your favour. For example, you can find written or verbal cues in the environment or whilst on missions that can hint to who might be the next winner of the next race, which is great fun and helps you make a few extra credits along the way. Number 4, the space combat. As someone who grew up on Star Wars Battlefront, obviously the first ones, as I'm clearly too old for it to have been the second time round, I personally love the space combat in this game. The sound design is fantastic, as it always is with Star Wars games, but the gameplay itself is extremely reminiscent of those older games, and makes you feel like an experienced starfighter, even though honestly, you're probably pretty terrible. I didn't get a huge amount of time in space, but the time I did spend there, I really enjoyed. I'm looking forward to seeing how that opens up when the game fully launches. And number 5, Nyx. Apart from looking incredibly adorable, Nyx is also incredibly useful. At first I found myself just focusing on my own abilities to affect the environment around me, but then over time I realised everything could be done so much easier by using Nyx's abilities to distract, sabotage, collect and more. Once you start to treat Nyx like an extension of Kay, the gameplay really starts to open up in some really satisfying and, frankly, hilarious ways. In short, Nyx isn't just a cute face, so make sure to use them to their fullest potential. Now we've covered all the things that I do like, let's chat about the things that I don't. First off, and probably most importantly, the stealth. In a game that is very much enhanced by your ability to be stealthy and uncover information without being seen, the stealth mechanics in the game are rather clunky and slow, which often leaves you in frustrating situations, as where if the mechanics had been a little bit more fluid, you could have easily navigated the stealthy environments. This is particularly annoying in the 4 stealth areas of the game, which are plentiful. I personally love stealth games like this. I grew up on Metal Gear Solid, but as the mechanics currently exist, Kay feels like she's sneaking around with the grace of a battle droid versus a seasoned outlaw. During my playtime, I specifically made sure to take the stealth approach and try to steal information for myself from Pike territory. But due to the moveset at my disposal, I was caught countless times simply trying to cross from one piece of colour to another. I probably should have moved on way sooner or found an alternate route, which the game excels at giving you, but I'm stubborn, so I wanted to see if I could do it, and after about 10 tries, I finally managed to luck out and get past the guards to the information that I needed. Even when I managed to complete this section, I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt relieved that it was finally over. This wasn't isolated to this particular mission either. On the final stealth mission, I ended up simply heading back to orbit to enjoy the space combat again before my session ended. I'm not going to lie, this is the one area that I did not expect this game to fail at, being a huge Assassin's Creed fan and this game being developed by Ubisoft. I'd be interested to see if there's any final tweaks or if progression and unlocking other abilities will help with this, but as it stands, this was definitely not one of the most enjoyable parts of my playtest. On top of the stealth, whilst I really enjoyed the space combat, driving around on a speeder was massively unruly. The slightest nudge in the wrong direction would send you spinning off the path, off a cliff, and likely to your death. This might be something that you can tweak in the settings, but the standard experience was not an enjoyable one for me. In fact, I found myself wanting to stay in the settlements or in space, just to avoid it. Finally, to the last thing that I didn't necessarily not enjoy, but I feel like I didn't get enough chance to experience, was the combat. Since you're not a Force user, your combat skills are limited compared to what we're used to seeing from Star Wars games. While I think the atmosphere that this sets is pretty cool, I felt like most combat encounters were spent trying not to get my face blown off if I was out of cover for more than a couple of seconds. With most games, I usually don't mind this, but it definitely felt weird for the setting where I'm used to being at an advantage. Taking on a hangar of stormtroopers isn't really an option here. Like I say, that's not something that I view as bad, but it's definitely going to take some getting used to when the game launches. Again, a lot of this could be improved as you go through the game and unlock more abilities, weapons, and companions. Overall, if you're thinking of going into this expecting something like the Jedi series, you're probably going to be a little bit upset. But if you've ever wanted the glimpse into the parts of the universe that shape characters like Han Solo and attempt to navigate them with a similar wit and charm, then this might be the one for you. Mass Effect fans in particular, I think you're going to really enjoy this one. And despite my gripes around some pretty cool mechanics, I am a huge Mass Effect fan, so I definitely feel like I'm going to be spending a good amount of time in this game, exploring all the different potential pathways and personalities that it has to offer. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to subscribe here and follow me over on Twitch, where I'll be streaming the game at launch. And don't forget, stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.